I'm Alex, 27. This is a story about a kid, a locked latrine, and a pile of consequences nobody wanted to own. If poop makes you squeamish, you'll be fine, because the gross part wasn't what happened in my shorts. The gross part was what the adults did after. Before camp, I was the kind of kid who tried to be good the way other kids tried to be fast. My mom worked doubles, our apartment walls were thin, and I learned early that the quietest kid gets the most permission. I knew where every bathroom was in every place we went. Grocery store by the dairy case, library near the kids' computers, church down the hall with the squeaky hinges. Not because I had a medical condition, not because I was fragile, but because nobody in my world loved surprises. School taught me the choreography. You raise your hand with the polite urgency of a weather report. You don't argue when a teacher says, after announcements. You never, ever make it a scene. I had one near miss in second grade during a math test when Miss Keene said, 2 more minutes, and my body said, no, now. I made it, barely, with a sprint and a prayer and a zipper that didn't quite cooperate. I came back red-faced and sat like a soldier at attention, and Miss Keene squeezed my shoulder in that secret way adults do when they approve of your control. My notebook had a little dark crescent where my hand had sweated through the paper. Nobody noticed. I decided that was victory. So when I got a scholarship to a sleepaway camp at 12, Camp Hawthorne with its glossy trifold brochure and words like leadership and resilience, I felt like I'd been upgraded to a new life. My mom printed the acceptance email and taped it to our fridge like a diploma. Outdoors, fresh air, new friends, she said. And I nodded like I was already the kind of kid who owned 3 pairs of cargo shorts and an Nalgene. Hawthorne looked like a postcard, pine and lake and docks that glowed hard in the afternoon. The cabin smelled like wood, damp socks, and the citrus cleaner staff swore made boy smell into cabin smell. My counselor was a 20-year-old named Mark, stocky, confident, wraparound shades even when it was cloudy. He had a whistle on a lanyard and a talent for rules that rhymed. Hydrate or dihydrate, early is on time, no drama, no llama. The bathroom rule wasn't cute, but it was clear. Use the latrine at scheduled breaks, no wandering off alone. They gave us the bear talk, complete with claw marks on a plywood diagram. We all laughed too loud because nobody wanted to look like prey.
The latrine, they called it the comfort station, which felt like it had been named by someone with a cruel sense of humor, was a long, low cinder block building. 6 doors, 2 sinks, and a permanent perfume that tried hard to be pine cleaner and failed. In the morning, the line moved. Before bed, the line wept. If you forgot to go before activities, you had 2 options: hold it or negotiate with a counselor who believed safety meant sameness. Day free was chili night. Industrial metal pot, plastic spoons that drooped under the heat, cornbread squares that could stop a tire. The kitchen lady winked at me when I went back for seconds like I was earning a badge. I ate 2 bowls because I wanted to be normal and because everyone did. By capture the flag, my stomach had started talking. Not polite murmurs, but cramps that rolled in hard, sweaty waves. I tried to out-breathe them. Mark was in huddle mode, blowing the whistle, setting teams. I raised my hand and said, "Bathroom?" "On the way back," he said, checking his watch, scanning the field, counting heads. "We'll hit the comfort station in 20 minutes. Lock it down, champ." I tried. I came from a family that thinks self-control is a personality. 15 minutes later, we jogged toward the latrine as a group. From a distance, I saw the line, already out the door, and a laminated sign taped at an angle that made my heart drop. Out of order, use lower latrine. Someone had broken a pipe that afternoon. The lower latrine was a hill and a field away. Here is the moment I knew. Not hope, not bargaining, just the clean, hard click of certainty that I wasn't going to make it. My skin did that cold-hot switch. Sweat ran down my back. The cramps didn't even pretend to be polite anymore. My stomach was fully rearranging furniture. I told Mark again, lower voice this time, not to embarrass myself. I need to go now. He looked at me like he was grading my character. He looked at the group like he was grading his liability. He didn't want to send me alone. He didn't want to split the group. He didn't want a bear story on his watch. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Breathe. Look at the horizon. Mind over matter." It wasn't mind over matter. It was matter over mind. When your body makes up its mind, you're a passenger. There was no cinematic sprint, no miracle latrine emerging from the trees. There was just a hot, humiliating release while I stood on a patch of dry grass trying to pretend the horizon was interesting. It happened fast. Messy diarrhea blooming against skin, sliding with its own physics. Heat, then cooling air, then the smell rising like a flare. I remember clenching my jaws so hard it hurt. I remember the world narrowing to a tunnel, and the tunnel having sound. A kid behind me doing a shocked, disgusted inhale. Another kid laughing because laughter is the only tool some kids have. A third gagging in sympathy. I didn't cry. I shut down the way kids do when shame is bigger than their bodies. Checklist brain. Remove, contain, clean. Except there was nowhere, nothing, no one. Mark swore under his breath. He snapped into damage control and marched us to the nurse's cabin like a platoon that had seen action. Boys muttered. One kid, Tyler, the quiet one with a chipped front tooth and a backpack that had a fixed squeak, fell in step next to me and didn't look down. That tiny kindness is somehow one of the biggest lights in the memory. The nurse, God bless every camp nurse, was a woman with quick hands and eyes that didn't run commentary. She took in the scene in one clean scan and did not widen her eyes or make her mouth into a lesson. She said, "Okay," in the tone you use when you're good at your job. She handed me a garbage bag for my underwear and shorts, a washcloth, and a bar of real soap. She told the boys to take a lap. "Not you, Mark," she added, and even that boundary felt like the right kind of door closing.
I cleaned up at the sink. It took a while. Diarrhea doesn't obey speed limits. The water ran brown, then tea, then clear. My stomach cramped again, and I used the nurse's tiny bathroom and went properly, the way I should have done 20 minutes earlier if an adult had treated my request like a need, not a test. When I came out, she offered mesh shorts and paper underwear, the hospital kind you think only exist on TV. They were absurd and a blessing. She handed me a ginger chew and a cup of water. Happens, she said, like a fact, not comfort. Then, "Do you want me to call your mom?" I shook my head so hard my hair slapped my forehead. She didn't push. She said, "You're still a person," with her face, not her words. If the story ended there, we'd have a bad evening, a good nurse, and a lesson that every kid learns. Bodies get first vote. But the ratio of pain in a story is always about what happens after. Mark took me back to the cabin and tried to turn it into leadership. He was embarrassed, and embarrassed people often try to manage their feelings by managing someone else. He dragged out the mop bucket from the maintenance closet and told me, quietly but in front of the cabin, to mop the deck, just to make sure we're all squared away. The deck was clean. There was nothing to mop. A couple of kids snickered. A couple aimed their faces at anything else. I held the mop like a prop I hadn't rehearsed. Tyler said gently, "Hey, he doesn't need to do that." It should have ended it. Mark doubled down. "Responsibility," he said. "Actions have consequences," he said, as if my colon had signed a contract. I did 2 angry swipes. My stomach flipped from adrenaline, not poop. I put the mop down and said, not loud, not defiant, just steady, "I'm not mopping a floor that isn't dirty to pay for a body being a body." He didn't like that. The next morning at breakfast, he made a point of reminding us loudly that bathroom breaks are rules, not suggestions, and that yesterday's incident had inconvenienced everyone. Heads turned, not all of them, enough. Camp has an economy. News moves faster than the lake wind. By lunch, a counselor from a different cabin asked if I was okay in a voice that telegraphed, "I know." By campfire, the story had mutated into mythology. Alex had an accident in the field, and they had to hose him down. No hose, sink, soap, dignity. Someone pretended to hold their nose when I walked by. One kid from archery called me latrine. Children are cruel in uncreative ways. You can survive cruelty. It's the repetition that kills.
2 days later was visiting day. Plenty of time for some counselor to try a parent-friendly version of my story. My mom arrived with a careful smile, a bag of snacks, and that posture that says, "Please let everything be fine so I can be proud without bracing for impact." She clocked the mesh shorts under my regular ones like she had x-ray vision. We sat on a blanket. She asked what happened. I told her the facts. Chilly, cramps, locked latrine, accident. Nurse. I skipped the mop. I skipped the breakfast announcement. I watched her face when I said poop out loud. She made that human face. Oh, honey, and also, oh no, and also, let's make this smaller together. Then she did the thing that still stings. She took out her phone to film a little update for the relatives' chat. Alex had a little chilly catastrophe, but he's a trooper. Mesh Shorts Club. She laughed. Not cruel, not careful. By Monday, my uncle texted, "Do we call him Camp Brown now?" My cousin made a meme I wouldn't see until school. When I told Mom I didn't like it, she said, "I didn't use your name," except she had. And even if she hadn't, everyone knew. Camp responded with a flurry of wrong. Mark pulled me aside for a talk he titled, I swear, Teachable Moments, in which he explained that my experience could model accountability. The head counselor emailed home with phrases like natural consequences and resilience building. Nobody mentioned locked latrines. Nobody mentioned a grown man making a kid mop a clean deck to satisfy his own discomfort. I came home with a plastic bag of ruined clothes, a stomach that now flinched at chili, and an invisible new set of rules that had nothing to do with cabins. Always know where the bathrooms are. Eat like a detective. Carry wipes. Don't drink milk before buses. Never give anyone a story they can tell about you without you. That fall, I mapped the school bathrooms by stall, door, and paper quality. I learned which teachers said yes on the first ask and which ones asked for evidence. I learned the art of asking early so it didn't look like an emergency, and the skill of leaving quietly without making it into a referendum on my character. 7th grade began with whispers and one very loud joke shouted in the hallway about camp and chili and shorts, which I pretended not to hear because mastering your face is sometimes self-defense. The PE teacher, who had clearly been briefed by the good gossip, started class by saying, "If you need the restroom, tell me once. That's enough." Bless her. It helped more than the guidance counselor's pamphlet about self-esteem. At Thanksgiving, my aunt reached for the cheap laugh, the camp story as a palate cleanser between politics and pie. My mom started to laugh along until she saw my face flatten. The table quieted like a soundboard had been pulled. I said, in my best adult voice, "I don't want to be material." My aunt called me sensitive. "That's the point," I said. My grandmother, patron saint of plain speech, put her fork down and said, "Let him have his privacy." We retired that story from family rotation. Not with a ceremony, with adults finally realizing their entertainment had a cost.
Years passed. Bathroom maps became less fear and more competence. I started eating again like a human, not a risk manager. But the camp stayed with me, not the accident, the structure around it. The refusal to hear a kid say, now. The way an adult tried to glue his embarrassment to my dignity and call it virtue. At 19, on a bus ride that stopped only in towns with nothing, I wrote a letter to Camp Hawthorne. Not a flamethrower, a report. I listed the facts like I was building a bridge you could safely cross. The locked latrine, the counselor's refusal to let me use the lower station, the diarrhea. I use the word because euphemisms feed shame. The nurse with the quick hands and quiet face, the mop, the breakfast announcement. I said I wasn't after refunds or revenge. I wanted policy in writing.
When a kid says they need to go, believe them. If a facility is down, provide alternatives. No public lessons. I CC'd the regional accreditation body because the adult version of me is not subtle when it counts. 3 weeks later, the camp director called. He started defensive, softened into tired, and landed on sincere. They had retrained staff, he said. They had posted portable toilets for when a latrine is offline. They had a counselor script now. Happens. Go see the nurse. No speeches, no mops. He said sorry like a person, not a file. It didn't fix 12. It put one piece of the world back where it belonged. I went back to Hawthorne on a volunteer day 2 summers later. New paint, better docks, the same cicadas, the same lake pretending to be a mirror. A kid ran past holding his stomach, and a counselor peeled off immediately to jog with him toward the lower station. No drama, just logistics. I stood there and cried in the stupid, honest way grown men do when the past gets a small rewrite. I brought a box of decent mesh shorts and wipes to the nurse's cabin because camp budgets never cover enough of the small mercies. The nurse was different, but she had the same face. No commentary, fast hands. I wrote thank you in the guest book to someone who would never read it. And I kept going, because this story, my story, turned out not to be rare. In college, I worked afternoons at a community center where kids showed up with all kinds of emergencies that didn't look like emergencies to adults who had forgotten how small bodies tell the truth. I printed a sign by the water cooler, "Ask once, that's enough." I trained teen counselors to point toward doors, not to speechify. When we ran field days, we brought porta potties even when the park technically had bathrooms. We taught the bathroom buddy rule for safety without shame. You take a friend to wait outside, not to witness. We put a little basket in the staff closet, spare mesh shorts, basic wipes, a couple pairs of socks. On the shelf above, a card with the only script anybody needed. It happens, let's get you cleaned up. Every so often, a boy would come to me with a face drained white the way my face once drained, and he'd say now. I'd say go. If he came back pink-eyed and small, I'd go quiet and get out the basket. No jokes, no lessons, just dignity. One kid hugged me so hard I nearly fell over. Another wrote me a thank you note on ruled paper that said, "Thank you for not making it a thing." I kept it in my desk.
Somewhere along the way, I stopped being afraid of the word poop. Not because I think it's funny, because I think it's exact. Precision doesn't embarrass you. It rescues you from the cloud of people's reactions. If the nurse had said, "We had an incident," I would have felt like a walking incident. She said, "Use the bathroom, wash. Here are clean shorts." She named reality and shrunk it to a size a kid could carry. I still carry wipes. I still map bathrooms in new buildings like my brain is running a quiet background app. I still skip chili on road trips unless the rest stops are friendly. That's not fear. That's competence I earned the hard way. The bigger change is that I no longer let other people narrate me. If someone starts to tell my story in a room, I say no. Not a shout, not a scene, just a steady no that closes a door. If they push, I say bodies get first vote. And if they laugh, I let the silence do the work people think laughter does. Sometimes I think about Tyler, my bunkmate with the chipped tooth who said the smallest necessary sentence at exactly the right moment. Hey, he doesn't need to do that. The world changes by inches when someone says the obvious out loud. If you're in a room where the obvious is hiding, be Tyler. Sometimes I think about Mark, who probably doesn't remember me, but might remember a mop. I don't hate him. I hate the reflex he was taught. Manage optics, don't manage care. He was 20 and a job that gives 20-year-olds too much script and not enough training. I hope he read the policy update. Better, I hope he ignored it because he didn't need it anymore. A last truth, the kind I wish someone had handed me in a sentence at 12. A kid pooping their pants is not a morality play. It's plumbing. It's timing. It's chili in a dining hall and a sign that says out of order, and a grown-up who trusted rules more than they trusted the kid in front of them. The only shame in that room belongs to whoever turned a body's need into a spectacle. If you're the adult, believe the kid and point them toward a door. If you're the kid and you can't make it, you are still a person. You are exactly as worthy of clean shorts and a hand on your shoulder when the world is loud as you were 5 minutes earlier. I'm Alex, 27. I had diarrhea at summer camp because a latrine was locked and a counselor liked rules more than people. I cleaned up. I learned. I wrote a letter, and the rule changed. Now I keep wipes in my backpack and a habit of looking for signs that say, "In use, try lower station," and it still makes me smile when I see them. It means some kid I'll never meet will make it in time. It means some adult will say, "Go," instead of "hold it." It means the world, by an inch, got kinder. That's the whole story. The rest is just clean shorts and moving on.